Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Coach's Corner University podcast. I'm your host, Paul O'Neid, and as usual, our podcast is sponsored by TC Nutrition. Get your batch 27, your complete isolate, and your aminolite. Use code TCXONEED to save over there. We're also sponsored by X Factor Labs for all of your peptide needs. Use code ONEED over there. Sponsored by Next Level Strength Co. for all of your equipment, knee sleeves, wrist wraps, t-shirts. If you compete in powerlifting, strength sport, or just train hard and need the best equipment, you can use code ONEED to save on their website. And then finally, the most comfortable barefoot shoes on the planet, Barefoot Shoes. Use code ONEED to save over there. Today I'm joined by a young man who honestly, our paths never crossed, but we have so many common threads within our strength and conditioning journey. Mr. Ryan Nosak. Ryan, welcome to the podcast.
What's up, Paul? Thanks for having me on here today.
It's my pleasure. So, Ryan and I both had I would consider Todd to be one of my primary mentors as a young coach. I was working with him for 2 years. You came into Robert Morris, like I think right after me, and then went on to work at DePaul.
Yeah, so my journey was I came on to RMU. It was June of 2014.
Mm-hmm.
After Robert Morris, I went down to UNC Charlotte where I replaced Skylar. So
That's
like that
right.
that that was our connection
Yep.
there. I was at UNC Charlotte for 2 years, and then I went on to DePaul, where I was at DePaul for 3.5 years.
And then now you own Rhino Strength.
Yeah, in the middle of COVID, middle of COVID for me was like the first time ever in my life where I was just at home and I was like, whoa, it's kind of weird to have some, actually free time to yourself. And, I had like a come to Jesus moment where I was like, I want to go out and do my own thing and be my own boss. And, yeah, I left DePaul in December of 2020 to run my own business, RyNo Strength, which is what I'm doing now in Chicago. I'm an in-person trainer as well as working online. And I've been doing that now for basically the last 5 years.
Talk to me a little bit about that transition in mentality from working for a university to working in the in-person space. You go from coaching, the highest level athletes that we have access to outside of professionals. And in some smaller school, DePaul, you probably worked with a few guys who went pro, but Robert Morris, UNC Charlotte, not necessarily professional athletes, but very high level to, I would assume, coaching more general population. How has that transition been? What have been, the things that you've noticed?
Yeah. Yeah. I started my career at Penn State, and Penn State is the cream of the crop.
Yep.
I worked with Cam Davidson for women's volleyball there, and that's like the best women's volleyball team in the country. And I worked underneath Craig Fitzgerald for football, and you have like two of the powerhouse programs. And I think when you start your career like that, you're exposed to the best of the best. And what was kind of cool for me is that each stop along the way, I had a different level of athlete. But when I looked at personal training, it was never something that I thought I would do full time. And you almost have a mark on you when you're a strength coach. You kind of look down upon personal trainers, and I was always like, high ego, head in the air, and I'm always just going to do D1 strength and conditioning. Um, I started doing some personal training on the side in 2015 when I was at UNC Charlotte just to make some extra bucks. But I enjoyed it, and when I had moved to DePaul, I actually started doing it in Chicago. And the reason why I was doing it in Chicago was to save up money so I can pay for my wife's engagement ring.
Oh,
And
wow.
I ended up at a gym that was literally down the street from DePaul. So I would do my shift at DePaul, and then at the end of the night, I'd go over and I'd do a couple clients. And I started to really enjoy it. And slowly over time, I started to build a book of business for myself. And it was in 2020 when I was like, I really enjoy just helping the average people of the world with their fitness goals. I think the mentality shift was I really took a step back and I realized that if I were to leave college athletics, the athletes that I was serving, they would be fine without me. Whereas it was these people that I was encountering every day, the grandmas, the moms, the teachers, the dads, whoever it might have been, where I'm really making a significant impact on them. And I feel like I'm actually filling up more of my cup now by helping out these people rather than preparing the Division One athlete for their sport or helping them go pro. Both were very fulfilling to me, but maybe it was the time of my life that I was in where I kind of realized it was time for me to do that, and that became my calling. I think my mentality was that I never was going to just become, let's just say, the average trainer who just goes in and spits out a random workout, just
Right.
makes people sweat, and there's no rhyme or reason. My mentality was that I was going to bring the highest level of strength and conditioning that I had learned along the way and apply that to my personal training clients. So I have loosely based periodization plans for these people that I have. We're hitting different qualities of strength, of power. We're periodizing the cardio that we're doing. I mean, I basically train them like an athletic approach,
Right.
and I think my clients really found a lot of value in that because a lot of them had had trainers before me, and they started working with me, and they saw a clear cut difference between the product that I was providing to them and the service that I was delivering. And that's really what I think allowed a lot of them to stick with me and stay with me over the last 5 years.
Well, I think one thing that I always try to discuss whenever I speak about my clients is like the majority of my clients are not professionals in whatever sports that they pursue. Like I do have a lot of professional athletes, whether they're professional strength athletes, whether they're tactical athletes and tier one operators, or they're professional like team sport athletes. But every single one of my clients is a professional athlete in their own life. Their field of play is life. Their field of play is parenthood, is professionalism, is the boardroom. And I think it does them a disservice if I don't treat them with the same level of respect and professional integrity that I would an athlete. Um, and I think that's where we share that common mentality. And whether I always used to say this and no one believed me, but, and I'll propose the question to you. You bring a kid from a 4.5 to a 4.45. Okay. You bring his 40 down 0.05 seconds. That could mean a couple $1 million on his contract. Cool. Amazing. You might have set that kid up for life. Really, it's probably a marginal difference in his quality of life at that point. Or you teach a single mother how to meal prep, and then her child learns what healthy eating is like. And you set that child up for a life of a positive relationship with food and the ability to, plan their nutrition and be healthy for a lifetime. What's the bigger win?
Number two.
Exactly. Um, the other thing from a pragmatic approach is college athletes don't want to spend any money, and
Yeah,
colleges don't want to spend any money either. Are you comfortable discussing like quality of life changes since making your career transition?
absolutely. I'd be happy to talk about that.
Yeah, talk to me.
I mean, I think um, ultimately what was the biggest driver in me wanting to step away was my wife. I had met my wife when I moved to Chicago, and I was a strength coach for 3.5 years while being with her, and she saw the grind. You're in a profession for. I was in college athletics for 10 years at that point, and I was barely cracking $50,000. How
Yeah.
many other jobs would you be in where you're there for 10 years and you're just basically coming up to maybe what's a minimum wage line in Chicago, right? And
In
I,
Chicago, you're living in a box.
I'm living in a box, and I spent so much time and money and effort on my education over the years, being in the right room with the right people. And I felt like in a lot of ways it was time for me to prioritize myself, but more importantly, prioritize my family. And my wife and I had the conversation where it's like, is this what you're going to continue to do for the rest of your life?
Mm.
And I looked at her and I said, I'm not sure if this is truly what's right for me. And when we had questioned me leaving college athletics to do personal training, we were running the numbers. And I realized really quickly that I only needed 15 hours of personal training a week to match what I was doing in my salary at DePaul University.
Okay,
At that, at,
let's pause here for a second. I want everyone to pay attention to that number because Ryan was not working 15 hours a week as a college strength coach. Ryan was probably working 50 to 60 hours a week as a college strength coach, if not more when you factor in programming and team meetings and stretching and travel and all that other stuff. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, probably at least 55, 60. And we, I think the hardest thing is that when you're faced with this fork in the road, so to speak, you question yourself, well, what happens if I fail? And it's hard because my identity was wrapped up in college strength and conditioning. All I ever
Same,
wanted to be was a college strength coach. Like
same.
I remember in college writing papers about how I wanted to be known as one of the best college strength and conditioning coaches of all time. And I didn't really care if I had a family at that point or like what I did with my life. I was so wrapped up in it. And truly meeting my wife changed everything, where I realized I want to be a family man. I want to have kids, and perhaps this isn't the path. So we looked at the numbers, and I had a mentor here in Chicago, and he posed a question to me. He's like, all you think about is what happens if you fail, but you need to be asking yourself the question, what happens if you succeed? And this guy would tell me over and over again that you're going to come to this point where you're going to be so overwhelmed with the amount of work that you have that the failure is never going to be a question in the back of your mind. And it's so funny because as the years passed, it's that question where it's like, how am I going to get through everything that I have to do on my plate? And the fear of failure is always going to be there as a business owner, but it's like, you have these experiences where um, the world gives back to me because I made a decision and allowed myself to open myself up to the world for these possibilities. The world has consistently met me back with different realms of possibilities where I can take care of myself and I can take care of my family.
Yeah.
So in my quality of life now, I have two kids. I have a 2.5-year-old and I have a 4-month-old.
Amazing.
As my 4-month-old was born in May, and I've been at home over the last few months. I've been able to cut down on my in-person schedule and essentially work 6 a.m. to 1 p.m. or 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. every day, and get home and be with my family and help my wife out with our baby in the afternoons. If I was in college athletics, I may
Never.
see that baby 15 minutes a day, if that, right? Um, and then all these other things that have happened over the course of time, like with me being an in-person trainer, I do spend a lot of time doing that still, but my online business allows me to not have to work 12-hour shifts around the clock. I don't have to work weekends anymore. If I want to take off and go visit a friend in Pennsylvania where I'm from, I'm able to do that. Um, I think for me, like there is inherently more freedom involved with running your business. Sure, you're still going to be attached to your clients and ultimately with their schedule, but you are never going to have a taste of that freedom in college athletics, because if you step away for 1 second, they're going to be pissed off at you because you missed their practice or you missed a team lift. And the fact that I don't have to be tied down to that anymore was perhaps the most freeing thing that I could ever have in my life.
It's a really interesting dynamic, and I'm I'm not jaded by it in any sense. I truly value my time in collegiate athletics because the knowledge that I gained, the experience, the relationships that I built. I truly would not be where I am today without what I gained from that experience. But in the same breath, the structure of that career path is one of attrition. Like you have to truly eat, sleep, live, and breathe that and that alone. And there are very few in the industry who have managed to be successful in multiple facets of life. And what I mean by that is like be a great coach, be a good father or parent, be a good community member. I think of people like Joe Ken, but I spoke with Joe on the podcast and he's like, yeah, I wasn't as present as I should have been during these periods of my child's lives, but now that, I'm in the pro level or now retired, I can be that person. And they have partners who traveled, like moved all over the country just to follow them along. Um, Joe Conley would be another one. Joe's at ASU. Actually get to visit him this coming weekend, which is great. But it you have to be able to give a lot more than you get back. And I don't think that there is any shame in saying that you're not willing to make that choice, because I made that choice and my life is infinitely better because I made that choice. Talk to me a little bit about the identity shift that came along, because I know that was a big challenge for me, giving up the identity of being a college strength coach.
I struggled with it initially. My first year would have been 2021. And I didn't realize how many friends I had wrapped up in it that were college trained coaches I met along the way. I always look forward to going to the NSCA events, the CSCCA, and seeing all my buddies. And I do think that there were people that maybe were following me on Instagram or were friends with me just because I was a college strength coach. And I think I unfortunately lost touch with some of those people or lost relationships when I had the shift, because I think some of those people maybe did look at me like, oh, he's just a personal trainer. He's not working with athletes anymore. And I think I wore a little bit of that on my sleeve initially back in 2021. And I think I did a lot of mindset work myself to remind myself, like, what was my why? Like, why did I do this in the first place? And it was really like my clients that I had that allowed me to come back to reality and truly be grateful, practicing gratitude for like the people that I get to train every day, and the fact that like a person will rearrange their entire schedule to come train with me.
Yep.
I have a few online clients who have come to Chicago just to spend a weekend or spend a day like training with me, and um, it's so cool to have like these like true fans
Hmm.
who really buy into you and believe in you. And I don't take their trust for granted. Um, yeah, I think when you there's like an exchange of money, that's very special, but I would honestly say that I value the trust component that much more. And if somebody's going
Oh,
to put their
absolutely.
trust in me to lead them, I'm not going to let them down. And I think that's like my true horsepower that gets me through the long days, or what really pushes me the best coach that I can be.
I love it. Um, Talk to me a little bit about how you structure your business, because I think it's important for the listeners to understand that everyone on the podcast, we're trying to showcase what their superpowers are. We're trying to showcase how they help the people that they help, but that's only possible with the right systems in place. So you mentioned that you've managed to cut down on your in-person hours, you've managed to scale an online business. Talk to me a little bit about how you've architectured your life to make sure that you're able to be a present husband and father.
I think I've arrived to the conclusion where I'm at right now by making a lot of mistakes. And I think you're going to do this as a early business owner. Um, I was taking literally any client that came my way in the beginning, whatever goal they had, whatever personality they were, whatever schedule they had, I would bend over backwards to make them fit. So what would then happen would be I'd have clients at 6 a.m., 7 a.m., 8 a.m., 1 p.m., 2 p.m., 3 p.m., 7 p.m., 8 p.m. And if you run a schedule like that, what I call the Swiss cheese schedule, you never really have time to like you don't have time to turn it off. Yeah, you can probably go and get a lift in between, and like I I realized that I need to have dedicated time blocks to do specific things. That if I'm going to train, that's a time that's blocked off on my calendar, that's dedicated for me to get into the mentality that I need to get into to train. If I'm going to write content, I have a time block for that. If I'm doing marketing or doing cold outreach or something like that, I'm having a block for that. I think in the beginning, it was just like, I'm going to train whoever comes my way. I'm just going to have literally no system when it comes to doing this stuff and try to do it when I can. And I think that leads you on the fast path to becoming overwhelmed when
Oh
you
yeah.
realize how much shit you got to do to as a business owner, as a CEO. You're not just a trainer, you're not just a coach, you're an actual business owner. So um, I think as I've made these mistakes along the way, it's allowed me to have clear cut boundaries and actually develop a system. So now that I have two kids, I no longer take clients after 4 p.m. Before I would say, okay, you can only train with me at 7 p.m. I'm going to do it. But now it's like, my last available session is this time. Can you make a session work? And what I found is that a lot of my clients will actually rearrange or do something on their end so that they can fit my schedule.
Mhm.
Um, I would work a lot of weekends before, and I realized that I was burning the candle on both ends. As a trainer, you are constantly on, you're constantly giving energy to other people, you're helping them fill up their own cup. And going 7 days a week without any break whatsoever, even if I was doing 1 or 2 hours on the weekend, was just like mentally killing me. So initially it was no longer working Sundays. Sunday was a family day, just completely decompress, take time for myself. That worked out really well for a while. And then as my first daughter came, I realized, okay, I got to pull it back again. Now it's completely off on the weekends.
Right.
No more Saturdays, no more Sundays. So I think with like each iteration of life change that I've had, I've been forced to make a life change to my business. I would say in the online world, online can sometimes be more work than in person because you want to open yourself up to these people and be available 24/7. But I think there's this like mentality that if you're available 24/7, like it's kind of like the people who have like unlimited PTO because they have it, they actually never go and take it. So you like do want to set boundaries to that. So like knowing that I have like dedicated check-in days with my clients, knowing that again, I have like dedicated times where I will answer you between these business hours. But if I don't get back to you between these hours, it's because I'm with my family and trying to take care of myself as well. And I actually think that as I've tightened up all aspects of my business, I have been able to deliver a better product. It's like if you shorten the guardrails on people and keep them into the lane better, they are going to perform better as your clients. And I think that draws very similar parallels to parenting is that like if you don't have boundaries with your kids and you don't like you aren't serious when you tell them to do something, they're going to keep pushing the envelope because they don't think you're serious. And I think that also lines up well with your clients.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. I mean, that's to me, boundaries and systems are the difference between someone who coaches people and someone who runs a coaching business. Two separate things. In an ideal scenario, you want your business to feel like Starbucks, right? So you walk into a Starbucks, you know you're getting the same service, even down to the same language they use, the same cup of coffee. Everything is the same from start to finish, whether you're in Chicago or Charlotte. But you want your business to have the element of a local mom and pop coffee shop where you walk in and you feel that warm welcome and you want to sit down and you want to stay there and you feel comfortable. There has to be the blend of the two. So, number one, the first part, the Starbucks part, is your systems and processes and boundaries. Number two is your personality and your personal brand. So, if you can blend the two together in a way that aligns with your core values, well, you're going to be in a position to provide a fantastic service. The other factor that you mentioned was when you shorten the guardrails, you provide a higher level of service. To me, any bad relationship is a result of poor communication or mismanaged expectations. So the only way to have great communication and great expectations on both sides is to put that shit in writing. How am I going to communicate with you? What are the rules of engagement here? How do we both, follow our follow the role within our relationship that we need to maintain? Having a terms of service, for example, that outlines, hey, these are my office hours. These are when I'm not working. This is when you can expect a response. This is when you can't. Um, Turnaround times, things like that. The online world is ripe with opportunities to set yourself up for the schedule that you want. You create the schedule. And if someone signs up to work with you, they are signing up to work with your schedule as well. I think there's this common thread that I see online a lot of like, I respond to my clients while they're in the gym. I'm basically a personal trainer through text message, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, that is a recipe for giving your client zero autonomy and never letting them learn how to train. What are your thoughts on that one?
That's also a recipe for burnout really quick. I mean, how can you accomplish anything else if you want to, if you're going to try to be the person who's doing that? Because I think part of the benefit of as a client of being an online being, if you're a client of an online coach, you want to be able to go in and hit a session whenever you want. And if that's not going to line up with the coach, like checking you out and being there with you, I'd probably get frustrated as a client. Um, but I agree with you that I think one of my key components is that I want my clients to know why we're doing what we're doing and to figure out like classic, like quote, learn to train, right? I want them to be able to like learn what it feels like to train. And if I have to literally hold their hand and do everything for them, then I am failing them.
I agree.
What are, your clients are going to be with you forever. It's not possible. And if I can give them the experience of, okay, when we go into the gym, this is what we're doing. If we're gonna hit legs today, we're gonna go through our mobility prep first. These are the movements that we're prepping to get ready to squat, to get ready to hinge, to get ready to do single leg movements. Okay, now that we check the box for that, maybe we'll do a few exercises for stability. This falls into my warm up category. Now we're going on to our lift. This is my warm up protocol that I'm going to go through to get ready for my lifts. This is the rest protocol that I'm going to take to rest between those. If I have any cardio listed, this is how I'm going to be doing my cardio. So like actually having a blueprint, so to speak, I think is going to prepare your client to be able to do this long after you're gone. And that's really what's special to me is that I think you can create like a ripple effect with these people. Is that if I go and I train, if I teach this person how to train, maybe someday they're going to go and they're going to teach their husband or their wife to do it the way that I'm doing it. And maybe they're going to teach their kids. And I think that's also what's really special about the way that we do it, if you're able to do it in that manner.
Well, I don't see any reason why you couldn't, right? If you actually have a system and it's just plug and play and personalize it to that individual, it becomes relatively easy to manage, the roster of clients that you need to manage to earn the living that you need to earn. Um, and I think in general, like I personally don't enjoy personal training, so I don't do it. But if I did, running a hybrid model makes the most sense because it gives you the opportunity to have the highest cost, highest lifetime value for every client. Because if they're using the hybrid service and have access to you in between their sessions, plus they're seeing you 1 to 3 times, maybe 4 times a week, that's a significant financial investment on their part. And then you don't have to maintain a large roster of clients to make the income that you want to make or be able to scale. It's the best of both worlds, in my opinion. Um, how long did it take you to? I'm assuming you started primarily in person and then transitioned some people to online or started acquiring more online clients. How did you go about blending the two?
Yeah, I would say that I've dipped my feet in both pools, so to speak, for the last 10 years. I remember graduating college and having a few of my buddies that were online clients. This is 11, 12 years ago. And along the way, I just randomly recruited some people to do online training with me. It was never really like a business. It was just kind of like a side hobby. And I I started to probably put more effort into it around 2020, 2021. Um, Fellow Canadian Jonathan Goodman, I discovered a lot of his books. I went through his online trainer academy. I did the online trainer mentorship, and I owe a lot of like how I grew my online business thanks to those guys. Um, I think as a trainer, you are never going to understand. I never understand what goes into marketing, and I think learning more about those things really helped me out. Um, I think as a as a strength coach, when you come into the online world, you are often a jack of all trades as a strength coach, right? And I think in the online world is that if you appeal to everybody, you're going to appeal to no one. And initially, that's what I would do. I would do what a lot of these other people out there would do. I would post on my story or make a post. Um, Strength programming, nutrition coaching, 4 week long program, DM me to sign up, right? But like you're never identifying who it's for. You're never identifying who it's not for. You're never identifying the length of time, the problems that you may be helping this person overcome. Um, and I think I've gotten smart over time of taking these various classes and various mentorships to basically make my messaging clear. Let me get those lights for 1 second here. Um, sorry
For
about
those
that.
of you listening, Ryan's in an office and the lights just went out.
The Undertaker just joined the room. Um, I think it went, as you do this stuff more now, I'm very clear on what I should be saying when I make these posts. And I think having more of a niche in the online world has allowed me to grow. I've primarily targeted people that were ex-athletes in their lifetime. So whether they were ex-collegiate athletes or ex-college athletes, or ex-high school athletes who want to lose weight and boost their energy. I looked at this from like an organic point of view. I'd often go to parties and people knew I was a trainer or a coach, whatever. They'd come up to me and they'd say, "Hey man, like how do I get rid of this belly?" Or how do I tone this part of my arm right here? And it was kind of classic that it was like people that were athletic at some point in their life, and then whether it was parenting or the course of life, they gained weight, and they were asking me for tips on how to get their body back. And in my mind, I was like, this is the light bulb moment. These are the people that I'm going to dedicate my service to. And that's basically how I grew online. I would say it's been a slow build over the last 10 years, but at the same time, my biggest growth has come in the last 3 years. Um, I remember in 2022, I had about 22 clients. My highest number in 2025 was 52. So I was able to essentially double that number over the course of 3 years. I think
It's amazing.
thanks to the business I did. You made a really good point about hybrid. As some clients, maybe they were with me in Chicago and they moved to a different city, or they moved to the suburbs. I was able to present my hybrid offer to them to keep them in my system of training. We had built such a solid relationship at that point that I think a lot of them still trusted me and wanted to continue that. And presenting them with a hybrid offer or just online offer that maybe they didn't realize was there before allows them to stay in my ecosystem, so to speak.
Mhm.
And that's been a great way to continue to nurture that relationship as well, and ultimately help my own business.
I love that you mentioned the relationship piece because to me, the relationship is the most important aspect of coaching, right? People don't know how much you know until they know how much you care. And I can genuinely sit here and tell you that I love each and every one of the clients that I work with deeply and I care about their well-being. And that's why I put so much effort into the work that I do for them. And they all know that. So when I look at my churn rates being so low, I don't have to market my services because I never lose clients. So if I organically add a couple here, a couple there, and never lose them, that's the easiest way to scale your business. One of the things that I found really interesting about, obviously I ask all the podcast guests to tell me what they want to talk about. And one of the things that you wanted to talk about was, creating long-term results. And you mentioned earlier how you strive to create, a learn to train mentality. I always, in the past, I had looked at that as like, well, I'm going to coach myself out of a job because if I teach these people how to, train without me, they're going to leave. But what I found was if you foster that relationship, they only want to stay. How do you go about doing that? What are some things that you do maybe a little bit differently, or what are some core values that you have within your business that allow you to foster those relationships and unlock those long-term results?
You said before, you have podcast guests who are maybe what's their superhero talent. And I think for the majority of my life, I've been able to be a chameleon. You know, I grew up at this gym that was like very grungy. If the bodybuilders of the 80s were still going, they would be training at this place. And that was the place that I really caught the iron bug. I was training with guys that were, probably out of jail, and
Love
I got
it.
along with them well. In college, I hung out with the athletes and the guys who went pro, and they were my buddies. And now in Lincoln Park, Chicago, I hang out with doctors, I hang out with CEOs, and I am a guy that I can run with the lowest of the low, or I can hang out with the highest of the high in society. And I'm going to find common ground with those people because I'm authentic and I'm myself. I'm not afraid to share my story with people, and I think that's a really big part of me as a coach. I'm not afraid to get vulnerable. I think oftentimes when people like look at coaches or they look at trainers, they often think that that trainer is going to be like the the epitome of washboard abs. Like they never have a slice of pie. Like they never make a mistake.
Don't call
And
me out like that, dude.
I think I think the reality of the situation is that a lot of people don't realize like how like them trainers and coaches are, and
They're people.
you have to be relatable. Um, I had lost my mom to cancer when I was 5 years old, and I experienced adversity really early on, and that set me down a path of choosing food for comfort. When I was growing up, I wasn't into sports like my friends were. I wanted to play video games, watch professional wrestling, and eat processed food. And that was like how I numbed the pain, and that part of me is still there, and that those habits have come and gone over the years.
Mhm.
But it's like the positive habits that I've built upon that to push that into the background are really what drives me to help the people that I help now. And I think like going through these experiences myself, I know what it feels like to struggle with food and to have that voice in the back of your head that really wants to stop and get a Big Mac and fries and a diet and a soda after work, or to just go home and like numb yourself in a carton of ice cream. I've walked in their shoes, and I think when people realize that about me, they realize that I'm truly there to help them, and that ultimately is really what allows me to like build relationships with people. Is that I'm authentic. One of the clients that I just had in person, he was telling me about how when he comes to work with me, he feels filled up spiritually, personally, professionally, because we're able to talk about a lot of different things. Like I actually take very I care about what my clients are telling them, and I think that if you ask my clients about me and what I know about them, that my brain almost goes into a photographic memory that if you tell me one thing about you, I'm going to remember that. It's going into like the box that I store for that client in my head. And that's truly because I generally care. I genuinely care about that person. I want to know what's going on in their life. I want to know what their kids are up to. And, truthfully, Paul, you can't fake that. I
You
think
can't.
yeah, that's just who I am as a person. That's kind of like what allowed me to change my life is that people really cared about me and were able to push me forward. And I feel like that's my life's duty is to go and help other people now. And that's essentially how I'm doing it through being a health and fitness coach.
Dude, I love everything that you're saying because, from a purely emotional standpoint, you're speaking to what it means to make a connection with somebody. You can't make a connection with somebody who you feel is completely unrelatable. And that's something that I actually ran into at the beginning was there's a perception that I'm like a robot, which on a lot of levels, I'm a robot. Like I do what I'm supposed to do when I'm supposed to do it, and I don't make excuses and it gets done. But one thing that I've started sharing over the last little bit is the reason that I've adopted that type of mentality, that type of what they would call discipline, I would call identity, is, as a young kid, my worth was transactionally achieved. I only was given validation when I achieved something. So I associated this external achievement with validation, with love. And it wasn't a fault of my parents. My parents are fantastic people. I have great relationships with them, but my brother needed a lot of help. So my younger brother got a lot of attention, and I only got attention when I did well. So it's an association that you make over time, and it's something that sticks with you. A lot of the reason why I share personal development content on social media is so that I can highlight the journey that I'm going through every single day. The discipline was born out of necessity, but it was adopted as identity. And now it's more of an internal pursuit that I really like who I am. And I don't need the external validation to keep doing the things that I do. And it was through the process of sharing that publicly with my clients first in private and then publicly via social media that I started to build this personal brand around raising the bar for yourself, raising the bar for your business, raising the bar for education. And as I discovered more of who I am and what makes me special, my business followed suit. There was alignment across everything, and things started to grow. And it started to grow very quickly. It seems like your journey of sharing more of your vulnerability, relating more to your clients, and then putting that out into the world has kind of been paralleled to my own. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I'll never forget this. We share the commonality of Hammer, and Todd Hammer dropped a lot of wisdom on me in the year that I had him, and I'll never forget. I think it was one of the interviews I was going on, and he told me, "Be yourself on steroids," and I love that. I like love that idea.
I wish he said that to me because at the time I wasn't on steroids.
That's hilarious. But I think like we are so man, social media is tough, and you're always trying to like stand apart in a world of thousands of people who are doing what we're doing. But the reality at the end of the day is there's only one Ryan Nosak. There's only one Paul O'Neill. And
Fucking
like,
right.
you know, I love the book The Alchemist. The main character was kind of like
Fantastic book.
searching his whole life for like, to figure out like the treasure, like the secret, whatever that might be. And the entire time he was like literally sleeping on it and not really realizing that it was like right underneath his feet. And I think a lot of us tend to go through life not realizing that. And I think for myself, it was like all this shit's out there, right? But like the most important thing is to be yourself, and people will respect you for that. Don't be afraid to be yourself. And I think, as I said before, as I've put myself out there more and as I've allowed myself to open up, the world has met me with various opportunities, and it lets me know that I'm on the right path and I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah, I completely agree. The interesting thing is when you look at social, let's just use social media as a landscape for the basis of our conversation, because I think a lot of young coaches put a lot of stock in social media. I won't say that it's not important, but I will say that it's not going to be the catalyst for you growing your business in general. Um, and the reason I say that is very practical, because if you have 10 clients and they all love you and you're doing a great job for them and they each refer you one person, you just doubled your business at zero cost.
Right.
Okay. So you don't need social media to grow an online business. But the first place that someone will look when they hear your name is social media. So it becomes a living, breathing business card. And when it becomes that, and you realize that your reputation and your, we'll call it like social credit, is contingent on you being present and engaged on social media, you start to compare yourself to people who quote unquote have success or do it well. And your definition of success for what you identify them as being successful in is not the same as your definition of success for your life. The business that they run is not the business that you want to run. The metrics by which they measure success aren't the same metrics by which you measure success. So you end up comparing yourself to something that isn't what you want, isn't what you're willing to do, and isn't where you want to go. Yet you still compare yourself there. How have you managed to navigate that? And I'm sure it's changed over time, but obviously you're still comparing yourself in some capacity. We all
Oh,
are.
yes. Dude, I look at your stuff and I want to compare myself to you and how much you've crushed over the years, man. Um, but ultimately, I think for myself, it's come down to I remember I practice gratitude. I have a gratitude journal that I write in, and I I try to look back at my journey, remember the places that I've been, and man, if I were to talk to the Ryan of 10 years ago and tell him everything that I'm doing today, he would never believe me, but he would be so damn proud of who I am today. And I think my definition of success, it's been really, can I be proud with the life that I have built for myself? And I'm very fortunate to run a business where I have clients that I'm really grateful for training. I enjoy spending time with them. I enjoy working with them. I have two beautiful kids that are very healthy. I have a beautiful and loving wife. We have a great family. The fact that I can run my business and be a dad and be a husband, um, and basically be present in each of those categories,
Yes.
to me, that's been success. Sure, I look on social media and I see these people that have thousands of clients, and maybe they're living on a mansion on the shores of Florida, wherever it might be, but like, you don't know what that person's going through behind the scenes. They could have had multiple issues that you don't see. They could not be paying their taxes. All of it could be a fraud, whatever it might be, right? And I don't ever want to get too far away from what's in front of me and the life that I'm living. So I think for myself, like having gratitude to bring me back in, practicing mindfulness, that's ultimately what keeps me out of playing the comparison game. Now, that doesn't mean that I get I get content with what I'm doing. I think what you need to do for yourself is to have goals, and
Yep.
maybe you revisit goals every season or every quarter, to keep yourself honest so that you aren't becoming stagnant. But when I do set goals, I'm setting goals against myself and the previous version of myself. I'm not setting them against some other coach that's out there, or some other fact that I need to like measure up against. My own measuring stick is, am I becoming a better version of myself?
Well, you also directly highlighted what your measure of success was in terms of presence as a father, presence as a partner, presence as a business owner. And when you have an objective measure for what success is, it's very easy to determine whether you're in alignment with that measure or not. So I actually had this conversation with my wife recently about like what success would mean for us. And we both kind of agreed that success would mean that we could do what we love with who we love, when we want, where we want. And the only thing that we were missing from that is a family, which we're going to start in 2026. So when you look at how far we are from success, my entire business lives on this laptop. We make enough money that we don't have to worry about our budget. We have our savings and our investments taken care of. Uh, I was in Dallas last weekend. I was in Virginia the weekend prior. I'm going to Phoenix this weekend. I'm going back to Canada in 2 weeks. Then we're going to Europe for 2 weeks. And our business is going to keep doing what our business does. We're going to keep serving our clients to a high level. So, how far am I away from doing what I love with who I love, where I want, when I want? I'm successful. Does that mean that I'm content and that I'm going to stop? No, because I can still be better with the service that I provide. I can still be better with the value that I provide other people. I can still do more and provide more impact, because the secondary measure of success for me is my impact. And this might be a bit morose, but I'm a big fan of stoicism. And stoicism talks a lot about death. And so I think about, like, if I was to die today, would I be proud of the things that people would say about me at my funeral? And at this point, I think I would be very proud. And so when it comes to the comparison game, there's nothing to compare to. My life is great. I will say, though, that I have fallen into the trap of being a caricature of myself. I worked with a social media company. So this would have been last year around this time. Um, and they were trying to get me to make, certain types of YouTube videos and then certain types of reels. And I did it. And there was so much friction there. I want you to talk a little bit about how you've managed to overcome friction, because I think friction is an interesting concept where the things we feel most friction towards, whether it be a heavy set of squat or an uncomfortable business decision, that's friction that we need to push into, because there's opportunities for growth. But there's the other element of friction where it just doesn't feel aligned. How do you determine which friction to push into and which friction to avoid?
That was a tough one for me because I was never really comfortable about selling myself. And
Yep.
the truth is that like we're all in sales, right? All I ever wanted to do was like coach people and train people, and that's what I spent all my time learning and doing. And I learned really quick that if I can't sell, I'm not going to have a business. So I think off
Yeah.
off the bat, a lot of friction, which is just came from me putting myself out there, and then me like advertising my services. So I would say recently, I'd say that the biggest friction came from just getting like the types of content that I want to put out there about me in the world. I tend to be the person that like I want to learn everything about something before I put it out there, because there's people like yourself that are like really intelligent. And if you see my post and I have like one thing wrong and you're like, no, dude, your knees are not supposed to go out when you squat, you suck, you're a shitty trainer, I'm never going to send anybody to you, right? Like there's so much nuance to like what we do, but ultimately it's like I gotta push past this. this procrastination that hits me because I'm worried about not being perfect. And I think like there are elements of perfectionism in me that keep me back from doing these things. So I think the some of the friction that I've overcome recently has been identifying problems that I faced in my own fitness journey and identifying problems that my clients are currently facing, and now like shaping content around that. Most recently, I created a post about how when I was during a really stressful period, a time period in my life of losing my grandfather, I remember coming home one night from work, and I had worked like a 12-hour long shift, and I didn't eat. I went right to my cupboard, and it was like 9:43 p.m. at night, and I'm in the middle of my kitchen, and I essentially ate an entire jar of peanut butter. And I
Oof.
made content around that. And for me, it's kind of vulnerable to share that story as a coach, but like I didn't realize that as I put that story out there, how many of my clients resonated with it, and
Mhm.
then how many people reached out to me about that story and said, "Thank you for bringing light to this. I didn't know that I was the only one, the only person who was suffering with stuff, who was dealing with these types of issues." Um, so I think for myself, it's just like reminding myself that there are going to be times of friction where ultimately I just need to send it. I got to do what I got to do to grow my business and get it out there. But I'm still going to remain authentic to what I'm doing. And it's funny that you say that about the social media company. In 2023, I hired somebody to help me do social media work. And I just remember like setting myself up for these reels, and like it's not the type of content that I want out there. It was very generic, cheesy in some regards. I can tell all like the captions were just like made with ChatGPT. And like I think that's where you run into the idea of like, okay, am I going to put quality content out there, or am I solely focused with quantity that I'm just going to put more junk out there into the world and hope that this lands with somebody? But the reality is like that piece of content isn't speaking to anybody.
Right.
I learned that now, where it's like maybe I'm not going to produce as much as I want it to because I have all this other stuff going on. But for like the 2 to 3 pieces that I commit to each week, I'm going to put my heart and soul into it to actually make it something that somebody wants to read, and more importantly, is going to actually help somebody out there.
I could not agree more. It comes down to the desired impact that you want it to have. You want it to make sure you want to make sure that it resonates with the person you want to resonate to, that you're speaking to a specific person. You mentioned something that I think deserves highlighting is you identified problems that you faced in your own life, and then you tried to correlate that with problems that your clients currently face. One of the things that I truly believe is that our clients kind of follow our own personal journeys, in that we are where we are and they want an element of that for themselves. They're just at a different point along the trajectory. And so because we've been through those trials and tribulations, we are now the guide. Like if we take the hero's journey as an axiom for this, if we are the guide as they go through the different trials and tribulations of their own hero's journey, and we position themselves as the hero, and we put them on the pedestal, and we just say, hey, listen, this is probably how you should adjust this, and we can help them avoid the pitfalls of despair that come with those downward mistakes. That's all we're really trying to do. So one of the best pieces of advice that I give young coaches when trying to decide how to market your services is your ideal client is probably you 5 years ago. Or for you, it's 10 years ago or whatever it might be. And it simplifies the process so much more. It makes it so much easier to share your vulnerabilities. It makes it so much easier to create relationships. And ultimately that friction kind of goes away.
I could not agree with you more. I help a lot of people that are coming from an idea of serious restriction, who don't have a solid plan in place, who were taught that quote unquote bad foods, are
Oh man.
always off limits. And it's those types of people that maybe you eat one cookie, you can't control yourself, therefore you have 12. And then it becomes a downward spiral of trying to eat, it's an all or nothing mindset. And it's helping people that maybe are stuck in that all or nothing mindset. I feel like a lot of ex-athletes are in that mindset,
Oh yeah.
but showing them that it's like number one, we have to improve your mindset associated with this. But number two, we have to have a plan that actually is going to hit you on all these different aspects of, are you going to get enough protein? Are we getting enough micros? Are we getting enough calories that if your goal is weight loss, we're going to put you in a deficit, but we're not going to put you in such a deficit where you can't function throughout the day and all you're going to think about is food every single second, because that's only going to set you up for a bigger binge. A lot of times these people are coming to me and they're the people who they skip their breakfast, they skip their lunch, they're not eating till the afternoon, and they're going home and like they clean out their pantry at night. And it's like taking a step backwards of like, we can eat food. We have to be mindful when we eat. Let's recognize our hunger signals. Let's recognize the state that you're in.
Mhm.
Are you truly hungry right now, or are you stressed, and are you trying to compensate for the stress right now? Are you feeling aspects of depression? And I think that's something that like we don't talk enough about. Is that sure? Obviously, the macros and all the food matters, but what about these other things that are coming as a result of the food? I'm going to share a personal story here. I don't have a lot of memories of my mom, but I do have some, and I remember making brownies with her when I was a kid, and I remember her letting me lick the spoon when we were mixing the batter up, and she'd give me the spoon after, and I'd lick it. And I remember a few years ago, I was in the height of a big cut, and I had posted myself taking a picture of the spoon and licking the brownie spoon, and I think for me too, that was like very personal content of like somebody's probably going to judge me out there and be like, dude, you're a fitness coach, you shouldn't be eating brownies. But like, man, food is so much more than calories and macros. I mean, that is like a core memory of mine. And sometimes like I need that comfort to be associated with that. And that's okay. And I think like real and like reminding people and teaching people that it's okay to do these things sometimes ultimately won't derail them. But it's more like when this becomes habitual and this is how you live your life every single day, that's really when it becomes like more problematic than anything else.
Dude, I love that you said that. I think when we're talking with clients, it comes down to sustainability. And I've always been of the mind that consistency is not perfect. People will always say, "Oh, I need to be more consistent." I'm like, "Well, consistency is just doing mostly the right things most of the time for a really long time. It's not being perfect." And if you zoom out, I always use this example with my clients around the holidays because it's the perfect example, right? You have Thanksgiving, then you have Christmas, you have New Year's, you have work events, things like that. So let's say you have Thanksgiving, you have Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, you have, let's say, 2 work events. That's 5 meals. That's 5 meals over the course of about 45 days.
Yes.
So 40 out of 45 days you could eat on plan, quote unquote on plan. And if you have 5 meals that you're conscious of, that you make mostly the good decisions, and maybe you pick 1 or 2 where you indulge a little bit more, you think you're going to derail your progress? If you do, the plan sucks and that's my fault, not yours.
Right.
And I love that you highlighted that because food is how we bond. Food is how we create relationships. It's a social construct that we are all a part of and have to participate in. So why would I do anything that would disrupt the relationship that you can have with something that is so core to our culture?
Yeah, I could not agree more.
So tell me something. What are you most excited about? We're coming up on the Q4 of 2025. What are you most excited about?
Truthfully, I'm really excited about the upcoming holiday the upcoming holiday season with my family. This
Oh
is
yeah,
like my daughter's 2.5 years old, and this is going to be the first Halloween now where she actually knows like what's going on. And almost every day I've been asking her what she wants to be. At first, we were going to be Moana as a family, and she had recently switched to wanting to do Monsters Inc. now. So every day I ask her, and she says, "I want to be Sully for Halloween." So we're gonna be as a family, we'll be the cast of Monsters Inc. I'm
I
excited about
love it.
that. Um, I recently just built a home gym in my house,
I
and
saw it. Looks friggin' sweet, dude.
thank you. I just finished it up about 3 weeks ago, and Now that I have this like condensed schedule, I get home a little bit earlier and I'm able to train as soon as I get home, or I'm able to train like first thing in the morning. And I'm just excited to like get back into a regular training schedule now that I'm actually sleeping again too, with having a 4-month-old,
Yep.
and having some big training goals for myself, doing a high frequency program, and just getting back into the world of training and feeling good myself.
Dude, I love it. Um, if you had a billboard on the side of the highway for everyone to read, what would it say?
Ooh, that's a good one. Um, Take the chance, you'll figure it out.
I love that. I love that. It's so true, especially when that chance is aligned with your values.
Yeah, I think a lot of people hold themselves back when it comes to confidence.
Hmm.
I was the same way for a large portion of my life, you know. Um, Truthfully, weight training was the thing that changed it, that flipped the perspective on its head. That's the element of the weight room that's really special. You know, you come up to that bar, 400 pounds is on the bar, and you have butterflies in your stomach, and literally that you're either going to get that weight or it's going to crush you in the process, right?
Hmm.
And I think you train that mental muscle over and over again, and you start to believe that you can become confident in yourself. And then you go and apply these things to the rest of your life. You'll go and ask that girl out on a date. You'll apply for that job that you don't think you can get. You'll go and speak to 500 people on stage. And I think like just getting those reps in, maybe in the beginning, you don't think that you're going to figure it out, but the reality is that if you just do it and you say yes, you will figure it out.
I totally agree. The last question: if you could see me interview anyone on this podcast, who would it be? But the caveat is that you have to help me get them on.
Yeah, I would love to have you. Ooh, this is a good one. I would like to have you bring on my buddy David Kitchen. Kitch was a guy that we worked alongside together at Robert Morris University,
Hmm.
and he had a similar path to me in college strength and conditioning, and he left to start his own leadership company. So
Oh,
he works with CEOs, he still works with athletes, but he in the way that I took what I learned in strength and conditioning and applied it to the personal training world, he took it and applied it to leadership. And I think there are many lessons that he's going to provide you with that he's learned along the way that are really going to help a lot of your listeners out.
I love it. If you could get me that intro, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, we'll do.
Awesome, Ryan. Where can everyone find you?
I'm most active on Instagram. My handle is Ryan.Nosak, Nosak. I'm on Facebook as Ryan Nosak. I have a website, RynoStrength.com. Those are going to be my main active sources of communication.
Awesome. Well, I'll have links to where everyone can get those links in the show notes. I want to thank you again for sharing your time with me, man. It's been great to catch up. Congratulations on all your success, and I'm sure we'll chat again very soon.
Thanks for having me on, man.
My pleasure. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Please make sure to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and we'll catch you on the next one.